Welcome back, everyone, to the Fly Culture podcast. Well, down here in Devon at the moment, the wind's blowing, the rain is falling, the river's been huge. It's interesting that the back end, my salmon fishing finishes on the 30th of September. And of course, once 1st of October came along, the rain came. So I've allowed myself a little bit of a wry smile about that. That's been quite amusing. It's been nice to catch up with friends as well. And if conditions allow, both social and fishing conditions. I'm catching up with some friends I've not caught up with in a long time. Going to do some fishing for grayling with them at some stage. And I've got some other trips planned as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really excited and pleased to be joined today by Phillippa Hake. She's a fly angler and a most excellent fly tyer. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit about her fishing career, perhaps pick up some tips as well along the way. So I hope you'll enjoy this as much as me. But Phillippa, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, Pete. Yeah, not bad at all. It's been a strange old year, hasn't it?
It's been a little bit weird, hasn't it? How's your season been?
So yes, it's not been too bad actually. When we obviously got the green light to be able to get back out again, I think I was actually working that day, and I was watching the clock till I finished, and I had all the fishing stuff in my boot. Literally raced down to the river. And I don't know, I can't remember what the weather was like, but yeah, I had a cracking day. And since then, it's kind of just got better as it went on. I mean, obviously with social media and stuff, I think everyone's had a pretty like exceptional season of what we could have had. I've seen some massive trout on Facebook, obviously coming out all over the place. So yeah, it's been a quite a good season for me.
It seems to be the story. Do you think some of that something to do with the trout having a little bit of a breather or not, and getting the
Yeah,
opportunity to feed rather than being fished for? And do
yeah,
you think there's that?
because obviously they had a good, what was it up here, March, like a nearly 2 month break really from people fishing for them. Um, so yeah, who knows if it it obviously had a massive impact. I think with having them having a decent rest and not having anyone fishing for them, and gave them maybe a little bit more of an opportunity to feed naturally themselves and
Yeah,
fill up.
that's what I was thinking. I wondered if, the hatches were coming along and the
Yeah,
fish were feeding
mhm,
sort of unmolested, as it were, and
yeah,
just gone about their business and really enjoyed that. And I
yeah,
found, the fishing picked up again towards the end. There was a little bit of a dip when I started to whack the fish a little bit and fish the water a little bit, but that definitely seems to be the way of things. And for me, I don't know if you're the same, but down here we open in March. We don't. There's not a lot going on, to be perfectly honest. So I didn't it was sort of nice to hit the river with rising fish straight off. I don't know if
yeah.
you felt the same. Yeah.
Yeah, so when obviously lockdown happened, I actually had to resist taking the dog down to the river because I just thought I can't hack that. I'm not going down there because it'll just be massive torture. Um, and obviously we had that really wet start to the year as well. So obviously the river levels were up and down anyway. And then obviously throughout lockdown we had all that dry weather. Um, and obviously it warmed up quite a bit as well, didn't it? It was we had all the so yeah when we actually got back out, it was nice to fish in just a t-shirt
It was. I
rather
could.
than
Yeah, I think I could, to a small degree, live with that. I know exactly what you mean, and filled my time with reading, even getting rod and line combinations out and
yeah,
practicing casting. Were you one who tied thousands and thousands of flies?
yeah, that I was that person. Yeah, I obviously I was still working, but not quite, not like every day, just like as and when I was needed, basically. So I've pretty much filled my boots with flies, and filled boxes, and bought fly tying stuff that I probably didn't need in the end up, but I bought it anyway. Um, but yeah, so I pretty much spent my lockdown tying flies and taking the dog out.
And that's been really good, hasn't it, for the industry as well? Because I guess there was
Yeah, yeah,
lots of people tying flies and buying books or tackle even, ready
Yeah,
for when they can hit the river, which has been encouraging, hasn't it?
yeah. It's been nice to see. I know there's a young lad up in Scotland called Gordo Stronach, and he's just started his fly tying. And I think during lockdown he spent quite a little, like, tying flies and stuff, and it's nice to see. I think some youngsters picked it up as well, which is obviously nice to see happening.
Absolutely, and inspiring people. Funnily enough, just
Yeah,
before we came on, that I was talking to. He's contributed for us actually, David Bazin. And he was saying how he met people via Zoom and all this other
yeah,
stuff, and
yeah, yeah,
he never tied flies, and has got into tying flies, and he's made friends as a result of
yeah,
it. And there's been, it's obviously goes without saying how terrible this whole thing has been, but there have
yeah,
been some really nice little positives out of it as well, hasn't there?
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, it kind of puts it in all into perspective about how much fishing and fly tying can bring to someone as well. Um, the joys and meeting new people, and you might not necessarily see them face to face, but like you say, over Zoom and FaceTime and the other endless opportunities that technology brings these days, it makes things that a little bit easier
Yeah,
to
yeah, it's
to be in communication with people.
absolutely. It's easy to connect now, isn't it?
Yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah,
as an old fossil myself who hasn't downloaded Zoom, I'm old school that I like phoning people up and people who
yeah,
tell you about WhatsApp and stuff like that. I'm
yeah,
just absolutely terrible at group things and stuff like that. But that's been the really positive side of it, hasn't it? And
yeah,
those things, the posts I've enjoyed watching people catching fish. I learned some
yeah,
stuff, flies. All those sorts of things have been really, really good, and I hope it long continues as well.
yeah,
Yeah, I hope that does anyway. But so, do you grayling fish as well? Do you where
yeah.
you fish?
So yeah, our trout season obviously ends on the 30th, so that's seems like ages away already. That now, um, and there's only a little. I think there's 6 or 7 days where we can't fish on the rivers up here. So yeah, once the weather sorts itself out, um, I'm looking forward to getting out and getting some grayling fishing in.
Where is your home rivers?
So my home river is the River Calder, which runs through West Yorkshire. I believe there's one up north, further up north. I think there's two River Calders, but the one I fish the most is obviously my hometown of runs through Sober Bridge and Halifax. Um, but yeah, it's a cracking little river as well. I love. It never fails to amaze me. Just because it's prone to flooding. It's prone to, with it being an urban river, prone to pollution and all whatnot gets chucked into it. But it always seems to produce the goods when I'm going out fishing, which is nice to see.
I think I remember for our old online magazine, Eat Sleep Fish, you wrote a piece about that, wasn't it?
Yeah,
About the flooding and was it the rugby pitch or football pitch that was
and it
completely
had
flooded?
yeah, there was something like 3 or 4 inches from the top of the goalpost, I think. That was on the Boxing Day floods that year. That was a really bad day. That.
Yeah, that the ones 8, 9 years ago, something like
Yeah,
that.
I think it was 2015. I think it was.
Right.
And it just did not stop raining for like 2 days. Um, and it just the whole I live in a little town called Sober Bridge, and I've never ever seen anything like it in the whole 24 years I've lived there. Never ever seen that much water being pushed through a little village town
Yeah. Yeah.
thing, but it was just mad.
That's one of the things I was thinking about because we're having these wet winters, and I don't know if you noticed when you got back to the river that having those big winters, the erosion as well. And I noticed erosion was a little bit of an issue where I fished. Did you notice, how the river had
Um,
been reshaped and banks eroded?
Not eroded as such. They kind of if there's a lot of in some parts of the river we have like islands and stuff. and some of them obviously got washed away. But not it doesn't really. I've not seen any erosion. I mean, I'm not sure what it's like upstream because I know upstream it kind of opens out a little bit. But the rest of it is kind of against walls, and rocks and stuff like that. So it's not. I've not seen massive parts of erosion where I fish anyway. Um,
Yeah.
it's just more, sometimes when you're walking up the river, I know where there's like a big rock, and after the flood, obviously that big rock's now moved, and I'm gonna fall over it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, we've with ours, what we've tried to do is get rid of the Himalayan balsam and
yeah,
really go down on that because obviously that's an issue for erosion. No, and I guess when I talk about it, I'm not saying we're losing huge chunks of bank, but it's funny when you walk along and you think, oh, this is a little bit
this has
different. And
changed. Yeah,
there's one bit where there's a big back eddy, and that back eddy, I guess, is starting to erode that. So
yeah,
I'm starting to think about talking to people. How do we, overcome that,
yeah,
and what do we need to do? Is there something we need to do about it? But it'll be interesting to see what happens. And part of it is exciting, isn't it? At the start of the season, as you say, where where there's a rock or there's a spot.
yeah,
Is it still there? And I know my friend Perry has a small stream that I fish with him, and he has a measuring rock, and he knows the height exactly by that
yeah,
one. It's a tiny little stream.
yeah,
And I don't ever want that one to go because he'll send me a picture and say, look, it's spot on. So I know exactly where the water is on the rock,
yeah.
whether it's fishable and stuff like that. So, and what is your favorite? Do you just, it sounds to me like this is a silly question because you just love it all, don't you? It's
Yeah.
trout and grayling, the whole lot. And is there, what is, if I wanted to know a little bit about your stream, how would you describe it to me?
Urban, very much urban. It is the typical urban stream. Like you'll get a bicycle and shopping trolleys and all that chucked into it all. It's not a massive river. It's not massively wide. Some stretches of it are quite slow. Where we get the coarse anglers fishing it. But when it kind of flattens out and it's all nice trout water, bubbly water, and like riffly water, pocket water, and all that. How can I explain it? It's just a cracking little river.
It sounds it. It sounds right when you had said the riffles and runs and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I assume the streams there aren't so deep, are they?
No, not really. I mean, when I'm out, the deepest I kind of fish it is like just above the waist. So it's not it's not a massively deep river unless where the deep holes are where your foot's not going to touch the bottom.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And how do you like to fish them? What's your favourite sort of method for fishing these streams?
I have two favourite methods which I toy with, which is classic French leader, which I'll use if there's not much coming off and I'm feeling a little bit lazy maybe. And my other method is duo. I absolutely love fishing duo method. It is. I just you've got a best of both worlds, haven't you? Sometimes you'll get a massive greedy, a small greedy grayling that'll come up and smash the big sedge or clink hammer that you've got on the dropper. But yeah, and obviously it's a good searching method as well when you're not quite sure what's happening.
Yeah. And how do you like to fish your setup for your duo? Do you have a short dropper or do you just go to the bend of the hook?
No, so I have it on a dropper, and then maybe 2-3 foot, maybe to the. It depends how deep the water I'm fishing is, because obviously I'm not wanting it to get stuck on the bottom and then lose flies. Because with me being from Yorkshire, I don't like losing flies, even though it does happen a lot.
Yes.
But
that means you're getting into the right zone, doesn't it?
yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
Yeah. And what about rod and stuff? Do you prefer the longer rods, your sort of 9.5, 10-foot rods?
Yeah, so I have a 10'4" weight and a 10'3" weight. My 10'3" weight I use for my nymphing, and my 10'4" weight I use for my dry fly fishing. Um, they're both cracking rods, so I just kind of stick to them. I keep meaning to push the boat out and get a shorter rod, because I have access to another little river which is a trib to the Calder, and it's like all overgrown. It's just full of wild brown trout as well. I go down there quite a lot after work, and I'm forever losing dry flies in trees. So I keep saying I need to get a shorter rod.
Yeah. And would you be tempted by fiberglass? That's obviously had this big
Yeah,
renaissance. And
I've read a lot about fiberglass. Yeah, them shorter rods anyway. But yeah, so I'll have to
yeah,
get one sorted for that river. I've not
I
fished
remember
it too
playing.
much this year either.
I remember playing with them years and years back, and a friend of mine said, "Well, I've got this fiberglass rod," and we couldn't find a fly line that we could make it cast on,
Yeah,
and it made me allergic to them for years and years and years. And now these, some of them, people say, "Oh, they put them in your hand," and you think, "Wow, these are absolutely fantastic."
yeah,
And I've been known to fish them. I like bamboo if I'm going
yeah,
to fish a small stream,
yeah,
or I've got some old short rods as well. But it seems as though that's a popular way of fishing, and it kind of makes sense for playing those fish in
yeah,
tight
yeah, yeah.
um, regions. And one
Mm,
of the things, I don't know if you feel the same, but a lot of the conversations I've had with people, that it seems to be that people are also now talking about obviously the rod as a casting implement,
yeah.
but also for playing fish as well. Is that something you think about as well?
Um, to be honest, I'm quite easygoing. Um, if if I catch a fish, I'm happy just to catch a fish. I'm not too technical with my tackle, to be honest. But yeah, just kind of
That's the way it should be as well.
yeah,
Take it for, I think we can get bogged down in all the minutiae and all the little details,
yeah,
and just a lot of it, I think, in my humble opinion, a lot of the crux of it is presentation, isn't
yeah,
it? And being able to get your fly to the fish
yeah,
without spooking it, and then working backwards from there, really, isn't it?
yeah, 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 absolutely.
Mm. It's interesting you talk about duo and stuff like that, and I'll use nymphing as well when I think it's appropriate and stuff like that. But I've even discovered that the other day I went out and fished, and I just stuck an indicator on just to see what it was
Yeah,
like, and I had a ball because I like casting
yeah,
the line as well,
hmm,
and it was just really good fun, and it had always stuck in my mind that I fished a duo, or actually I watched a friend fish a duo on a chalk stream, and he was casting and I was seeing the grayling coming and
yeah,
nothing registering, and that sort of really stuck in my mind, and I think, oh, I'm missing fish that I probably don't know, but actually I'm not that bothered about
no,
it now. And the takes then, I suppose it was getting back season, were good. You could see the thing go, and sometimes I was greasing the leader up if I wanted to go a little
yeah,
bit
yeah,
deeper and taking that,
hmm,
and it was really, really good fun. And that's the nice thing, isn't it, that, like you were saying, that fishing has always got a different avenue that we can look at
yeah,
and make us enjoy it still.
yeah. I mean, as long as for me, it's all about having meeting new people and visiting places that you wouldn't necessarily visit, um, and just having fun. Catching a few fish, um, having a beer after and all that, and just having a laugh. Really, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's important. As long as you're having fun, then no else should matter, really, should it? And it's
Well,
all right to if you don't catch, that's fine. It's
yeah,
not all
yeah.
about
Well,
it's not all about numbers, is it? And if you're having fun, then that's all that should matter.
absolutely. And it ticks box, like you said, the numbers things. I'm exactly the same. I honestly don't care.
Yeah,
And the more difficult it is, the more interesting it is. That's what it, but I think that's a path that you go down, isn't
yeah,
it? And it's talked many times and numbers and things. But yeah, it just doesn't bother me that much. And after the kicking I've had with the salmon, I think, well, I've done everything I could do. I
yeah,
couldn't do any more, and that's fine,
yeah,
and I'll enjoy it next year and come back loving it just as much.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's really relevant to
Mm.
me too. So, yeah. Where did your career start? When did fishing come to you then?
So I've since I was young, I'd always I've always had friends that have gone fishing, so I've gone fishing with them, and we didn't have a clue what we were doing. We were just messing about on the river. And then I dabbled in coarse fishing for maybe a year or so. Messing about on the canal, and then it kind of got put on the back burner for a little bit. When I started high school, my attentions turned to football. Absolutely football mad. Everything I did was football. I took football to school. I took football on the weekend when we'd go in the caravan. And then once we went to Carsington Water in Derbyshire with my mum and dad in their caravan club. And my dad went out on a boat with, there was a bunch of guys that did fly fishing. And, whenever we'd go near a venue, which was fly fishing, whether it be Carsington, Rutland or whatever, my dad used to go out with one of the guys. And I thought, if Dad's going on a boat, I want to go on a boat. So I went out on a boat in. It was the worst day of my life, Pete. Honest to God, I could not wait to get off that boat. We didn't catch anything. No one knew what we was doing. But yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, and pretty much. Yeah, the rest is gone now. So after that trip, I weren't thinking, right, this is it now. I want to carry on fishing. It was a case of it kind of got left alone for a little bit, and then I went back to it again, and I caught a fish. My dad caught a fish, and I thought, wow, I want to do that. And he bought me a Shakespeare starter kit. This rod, every time I cast it, the end of it came off. And I think, where was we? I think we was at Formark Reservoir. I think that's also in Derbyshire. There's a tip of a rod at the bottom of Formark. So then I upgraded to an Orvis starter kit then, and that is it. The rest is history.
And so what happened? It was lakes, and did you sort of progress fishing lakes and then move to rivers? How did that come about?
Started on the lakes and little still waters with my little, I think it was a 9'5" weight that I used to use. And then I left college and I was toying between whether should I go back, should I just quit and get a job. And that summer I spent every single day on the river because I always knew obviously there was fish in the Calder. So I thought I'm just gonna, I don't know what I'm gonna do, so I'm gonna go fishing. And then so I spent every day on the river for about a month in the summer, and I ended up thinking I don't want to go back to college. It's not for me. And school's never been my strong point anyway. So I got a job, and then I just carried on fishing the river when I could, and then I started fly tying, and that's a whole nother journey.
We'll come on to the fly tying in a sec, because I'm really interested to know that you were fishing the river pretty much every day when you could.
Yeah.
Did you know what you were doing, or did you figure it out as you went
Not
along?
a clue. Didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was fishing. What did I have? The 9'5" weight or whatever it was. And I think I was fishing these. They must have been inch-long flies. And I'm thinking I didn't catch anything. Every single day I went, and the only thing I caught was a tiny little 3-4 inch grayling. And I bumped into a chap called Gary Hyde who is actually no longer with us. And he gave me some flies on the river, which I've still got somewhere in a fly box. And he recommended me do this, and this. And I took it all on board, and then I started catching fish then. So I was like, wow, he weren't lying. Like, I'm actually catching like substantial fish. So yeah, that's how that happened, and then I progressed on to different methods such as duo and, dry fly fishing and nymph fishing. And then I thought there must be other people that do this. So I joined the Facebook group for our local club, and lo and behold, it's got fly fishers in it. And then obviously on, just Facebook in itself and Twitter and stuff, I thought, I can't believe how many people do this. But yeah, it was great.
That's really cool. And I knew Gary a little bit, not very well. Really super nice guy, and
Yeah,
that shows the fly fishing fraternity really well, doesn't it?
yeah,
That he wanted to give you flies, wanted to help,
yeah,
and stuff like that. And that's a lovely legacy, isn't it, to be
yeah.
able to do that? And I bet those flies mean a lot to you as well, don't they?
Yeah, they're in a box somewhere in a drawer. I'll probably never use them because I don't think I could ever use them now. I'm pretty sure one of them is a worm pattern. I think it's a bloodworm pattern that he gave me. He said, "Here, Phillippa, put this on." And his
That's ahead of the curve there, ahead of the squirming
yeah,
and all that
yeah,
sort of stuff, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, I suppose San Juan worm type thing, was it?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice. Really cool. And so you're fishing, you've joined a group. Are you fishing the same river, or are you spreading your wings a little bit
Yeah,
now
no,
and
so
heading a little bit further?
I'm fishing the same river, but just different spots. I was going to like the same little stretch every day, just testing the water, just messing about basically. And then I obviously met Gary, and then he suggested me try this area, and then I found myself at that point I didn't drive, so it was like, Mum, can you take me to the river? So my mum or my dad would take me to the river and then pick me up 7 hours later. Um, After I'd filled my boots with trout and grayling and whatnot. But yeah,
That's fantastic. And did you find that since you discovered the sort of the Facebook, the Twitter, and all that sort of stuff, did you think your knowledge curves grew really progressively as a result of that?
yeah. So I mean, you know what Facebook's like yourself. You look on and there's a different fly every day that someone's posting. Um, and I made friends with Lisa Isles. Um, and Lisa's a good friend, and she came over and we went fishing, and that was a whole new thing. Like obviously Lisa's got massive experience, in every single field of fishing. And she came over, took the time to come over and go fishing with me, and just the amount of stuff that I learned just from that few hours on the river was I still, use the same stuff that I've learned from Lisa now. Um, and obviously there's, many other people that I've fished with. And every time I fish with these other people, it's just like, just to see how they fish and, the different things that they use, the different methods, different knots, different ways of casting. It's just every day is a learning day when you meet someone from,
That's, that's really cool, and they're pretty cool mentors to have, aren't they?
yeah,
I've met Lisa once, and funnily enough, Yeva's been in touch with me and said, "Oh, I should speak to her as well." So
yeah,
we're going to have her on the
yeah,
podcast at some stage as well. So I'll reach out to her at some stage. But that's really cool. So the next thing, I guess, then you're seeing, like you say, these flies being posted every
yeah,
day. It was really just a natural progression.
yeah. We'd gone to, me and my dad had been fishing, and I'd just I'd caught my first like rainbow trout from a small stillwater, and then we went to a fly tying shop called Fly Only in Huddersfield.
Stuart and Vicky.
Stuart and Vicky, yep. And we'd, I'd been a couple of times before, but just for fly fishing gear. And I'd said I want to do some fly tying now, Dad. So he says, "Oh, you want to do it?" So I said, "No, I will." So he bought me a Vineyard starter kit, and it was something like 70 quid or something like that. And one of these cheap vice. So all in all, it was about £80, 80, 90 quid that he spent on me. And his exact words were, "You'll use it for a week and it'll go in loft." I said, "No, it won't, it won't." So I get home, and it came in this little box thing, and obviously that box grew. And I'd watch videos on YouTube from David McPhail, all these different YouTube videos, and I'd try and copy these flies, and I couldn't do it. I was terrible. And obviously, you know what fly tying's like. You've got one material in one colour, and then you look online and it's in another colour. And obviously, because you haven't got that colour, you have to buy it. So this box was growing and growing to the point where it wouldn't shut. So the box then became a bigger box, and then the bigger box became a spare room. So I ended up moving the fly tying station bench into the spare room, which then became the fly tying room. And literally the rest is like the fishing, just history. My tying got better and better every week. Just
And
from
where did you find that start? What was the tipping point for you where you suddenly realized, actually, I'm getting the hang of this? Was there a particular pattern that you were practicing? Was it just hours of time flies that saw the improvement? What was the thing that was the changing point for you, or
yeah.
turning point?
So I'd literally I'd come home from work, take the dog out, and I would tie flies all night long. Um, and then I would catch on the flies. So I'd focus on the flies that I was catching on, make them better. Um, making sure all the proportions are right and whatnot. And then what happened was I went to the British Fly Fair and met Daryl Mooney from Partridge. And he had a word with me and said, we have this talent pathway. We'd really like you to come onto it. And then that then gave me the opportunity to go to these fly tying shows and sit next to people like Paul Little, for instance. I tied next to Paul once at the Fly Fest. That was daunting. Sitting next to someone like Paul Little when you're just kind of starting out in fly tying industry. And people like Paul Little and Paul Proctor, I'd get to sit next to them, and they're kind of like a mentor basically. And when I was first starting out, I actually used to send my flies up to Paul Little in an envelope, and he would email me back with pointers and how to make them better, and take quarter, something like that. I'd say in these emails. And that's just how it kind of progressed. And then, obviously with the growth of social media and Instagram and Twitter and all that lot, I was getting noticed and more and more. So I'd get, I was getting invitations to tie at these shows and stuff like that. And but yeah, so it just kind of snowballed out of control, really.
That's really cool. That's really cool. We're going to come on to shows shortly because I want to talk a little bit about those. But do you remember your first river trout fish or grayling that you caught on your very first fly on the
Yeah,
river? Can you remember the pattern? Can you remember it?
yeah. It was a little. It was a copy of one that Gary had given me. Actually, it was just a little black spider with a silver rib. And again, I didn't have a clue how to present this fly. Like, I didn't know what a spider was back then. And I was fishing them upstream, and like pretty much like what you'd do now with a Euro nymph setup. Except I didn't have an indicator or anything. I was just chucking it upstream and retrieving it back. And I caught this trout, not a big trout, half a pound or something like that. And I thought, wow, this is good. This, yeah, and that's pretty much how it started.
That's really cool. And I love the idea of this talent pathway thing as well, which is a really good way to bring people in to the sport in
Yeah,
a really positive way rather than throwing people in as ambassadors or whatever the
yeah,
term is
yeah,
these
yeah,
days. That's sort of a pathway, and getting the chance to sit with Paul or both the Paul Square, really. Those two are just awesome fly
yeah,
tie, awesome people to learn from as
yeah.
well. And it's about as good as it gets. I know Paul Little as well with salmon flies. Have you ever tied salmon flies?
I've tied a couple, but I just can't do them. I just can't get my head around tying them. I don't know if it's because they're bigger and I'm used to tying on little size 18, 20 hooks and whatnot. But yeah, I've tried and I think I'll stick to my trout patterns.
Yeah. What about the shows then? Because I've seen you at shows. I
Yeah,
remember seeing you at the BFFI at London. You were at London as well,
yeah.
weren't you?
I
Yeah.
did the second London one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um.
And how do you see them now? We've obviously just got the BFFI and we had Toby's show down in
Yeah.
Bristol. The London one's not happening now. You know, it's great that there's a central spot or hub for this show in
Yeah.
Stoke now, which is really good news. Do you think we need others? Do you think that would be good for fishing, or do you think
Yeah.
just having the one will be a good one
I
to
mean,
just have?
it'd be great to get the other shows back. You know, like the London shows and um the one that Toby did. Um. But it all, you know, with the one at Stoke, I mean, I think it's so well publicised as well, and you know, it's one of the only shows that I know that where they have literally people from all over the world coming to it, and I just don't think anyone will do it better than what Bridget and Steve run it as.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it's an absolutely fantastic show. It's literally you could ever want at a fly tying fishing show thing. Um, but yeah, like I say, it would be nice to have, you know, like the likes of the Fly Fest that we used to have up in Penrith, um, and obviously the London show. That was when I went. I thought it was fantastic. Um, but yeah, it was sad to see them all go. But you know, at least we've still got one or two shows left.
Yeah, absolutely. So at these shows, I know we had Gareth Lewis on as a guest, and he
Yeah,
said one of the things was that he doesn't get much of a chance to actually tie flies because he's busily talking to someone. Is it similar for yourself?
yeah. So Gareth, I've obviously sat next to him twice now at the show. I kind of always get towards like I like this year I was sat next to Gareth and what's he called? Gareth and Gareth's friend. What's the Gareth's friend called? I can't remember his name. But yeah, Gareth talks obviously a lot because you know he's an absolute phenomenal fly tyer, and you know he has people coming up to him to talk about fishing and you know fishing in Wales and stuff like that. So yeah, Gareth obviously spends a lot of his time chatting to people, and he'll tie a few flies maybe, and whereas I, on the other hand, take the opportunity to fill my fly boxes up, and obviously talk. I do talk a lot to people as well. But yeah, I do love that show. It's one, you know, there's nothing else like it to get the opportunity to obviously see people that you've not necessarily met before. But yeah,
Yeah, it's really nice to catch up with people, and
yeah,
you know, I like up there. Certainly, the team I'm up there with, um, the banter in the evenings as well is just
yeah.
fabulous fun,
So
and the whole thing is really, really good.
yeah,
Really great experience and a positive experience, isn't
yeah. It's always a heavy night on the Saturday night.
it?
Some sore heads on the Sunday.
So tell me, when you did it for the very first time, how did that feel, and what did you sort of prepare what you were going to tie? Did you have an idea of what you were going to
um,
tie?
I kind of just winged it. So I got the email with the invitation on it, and I thought, oh my god, this is big. This, um, you know, and I went and I took it all in my stride, and I didn't necessarily have right. I'm gonna tie 5 of these, and I'm gonna tie 3 of these. I just kind of winged it and just kind of, you know, if someone wanted to see a pattern, then they, you know, they come up and they say, "Oh, is there any chance you can show me how to do this? Is there any chance you can show me how to do that?" And that's pretty much how I play it. Um, but yeah, it is nice when someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, I've seen this fly that you've posted on Facebook, or I've seen this fly that was in a magazine. Can you can you replicate it and show me how you do it. And I think that's what it's all about, to be honest.
Do
Showing.
you have a question that most people ask you? Is it how do I whip finish properly? Is there a constant question that you tend to be asked a fair amount of the time?
Not necessarily. I get asked mostly like because obviously the flies that I tie are like near enough like size 16 to like 20. So like they'll come up to me and they'll go, oh, wow, they're small. How do you see them? And then they'll ask, can you show me how you tie one? So not necessarily can you show me how to. I mean, I'm probably the worst person to ask to show you how to do a whip finish because I can't do them myself properly. I do it with my fingers because I can't do it with the tool. So yeah.
That's cooler doing it with your fingers anyway.
Yeah, it's much more personal.
Cool. So if someone is, we're in October now, the weather's a bit miserable. What would your 3 nymphs and 3 dries be that you would say people should probably consider tying if they haven't already?
My dry flies would be a plume tip for the grayling, a little yellow quill plume tip, maybe a parachute fly, maybe, and possibly a sedge, maybe as well. My nymphs, God, there's so many to choose from. A red tag, definitely a red tag. A one of my there's probably another name for it because everyone's got different names for flies, but what I call it a purple majestic, which is pretty much like a black rabbit with a bit of purple and a pearly rib going around it. One of them, and just a little natural quill jig, maybe, probably one of them.
Nice.
That's what I probably go for, maybe with a little orange hotspot.
Nice. Can you give me a tip, please? I think I know the answer to it, but when tying with quills, sometimes they split when I'm wrapping them. Is there something I should do?
I before I tie them in, I always wet them. I just run them through my lips. Some people put them in water, at the side and whatnot. But I just wet them with my lips, and then tie them in. But I've had them that split. Sometimes you can salvage them, sometimes you can't. But yeah, I just run them through my lips, get a little bit of moisture on them, and then that's pretty much it.
Cool. And do you treat them with UV once you've tied them, the quills?
I used to use resins quite a lot, but it kind of, for me, it took away the segmented look to it. So now I just dab a little bit of varnish on the thread before I wrap them round, and that I've to this day I've not had one that unwraps. And obviously, if you're adding varnish to a dry fly, it's going to add weight and stuff. So I tend to I don't actually use resins that much anymore in my fly tying, other than if I'm tying like perdigons or something that actually needs resin on it.
I was going to come on to perdigons actually because I'd like some advice on that. I can't. I tied them where however many years ago, was it 4 or 5 years, something like that, when they first started coming out. I don't catch many fish on them.
No, I don't either.
Mm.
Yeah, I think they have a time and day for them. But yeah, it's not something that I have a lot of in my fly box. I think I've got a couple in there, but yeah, I'm the same. I don't particularly catch a lot on them. Most of my fishing is the majority of my fish are caught on like a handful of different flies. And there's nothing really too different about them. They're just in different colours, really. Whether that be, a hazier jig with a hint of purple or a hint of orange sparkle dubbing or something like that. But they're all just, pheasant tail nymphs and stuff like that. Old school stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to come around saying. Do you think we have sort of fad flies, which certainly do work?
Yeah,
But I've mentioned before on here, I think that I'm a lot of the time, and I've not been time flies for quite some time now, but most of mine are sort of variants of a pheasant tail,
yeah,
which I can do lots with by changing the rib, thorax, adding a hackle,
yeah,
and all sorts of different ways there. And I found last winter that's pretty much all I fished, different bead colours,
yeah.
and just going from there. Do you think there is, like you just said, actually not many patterns? That there's not always the need. That having been said, I had serious fly box envy when I fished recently with a friend of mine. He had beautifully. My fly boxes are shambolic. The way they look, they're a real mess. But do you think there is not always the need for hundreds and hundreds of patterns rather than sizes of those
Yeah, I
variations? Do you
mean,
think?
I've never been one to carry a lot of tackle with me. Um, I very rarely take more than 2 fly boxes with me when I go fishing, and it's my fly box is never full. Um, because I lose flies and whatnot, or they're on the bottom of the river. Um, but it's all pretty much 2 or 3 different fly patterns, but just made different. Whether, like you say, different color bead, different sizes, different variations of them. Um, but yeah, it all boils down to literally like 2, 3, 4 different fly patterns, just tied differently, based, changing, like I say, the color of the bead and stuff like that.
And a lot of that's confidence, isn't it, as well?
Yeah,
And, I know I'm similar with the hare's ear. It just, for some reason, doesn't work for me, but that's in my head more than anything
yeah,
else. And as a result of that, I don't fish it a
no,
great deal. So I'm not going to catch many fish on it
yeah,
anyway, but I know if I can tie on a pheasant tail or a variant, and it's been, while we've been talking, it's been going through my head, the amount of variations you could
yeah,
do. And I was thinking about flashbacks on there all the way along the back of
yeah,
flashback. And there's so many that you
yeah,
can actually play with,
yeah.
can't you?
There's especially now with the amount of different materials you can get. I mean, obviously when fly tying obviously came about, there was only a handful of different materials that people had. They didn't have all the fancy sparkly stuff that we have these days. Literally like you can order it online and it's on your doorstep the next day.
Mm,
Um, so I mean, sometimes I just like to strip it all back and just fish like natural stuff.
mm.
Um, and like you say, it all comes down to confidence. If you've got confidence in the fly, then you know, carry on doing it like that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, and like you say, it's you said you tie mainly small flies, and it's probably that's more likely the thing I guess you're going to change rather than pattern,
yeah,
isn't it? That certainly I know if I'm thinking about dry flies, that's probably the first thing I think about. If the fly's been refused, do I need to go smaller?
smaller.
And then if I've sussed out by watching the hatch, I've sussed out what the hatch is, what stage of the
Yeah.
hatch the fish are on. So then it comes to me down to right, okay, I think this is the right one. And the next thing that I'd think is probably size and to go
Yeah,
smaller, yeah?
yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, sometimes I'll start on like a 16 and nothing much will be happening, so I'll think maybe I need to go smaller. And so
Mm,
I'll drop down to an 18, and then if need be, I'll go smaller to a 20. Um,
yeah.
and it's just all about working out what, it's part of fishing, and it working out what the fish want, what the fish are feeding on, and if you study it all, and you'll soon find the answers to it, and then once you find the answers, you'll find that you're catching the fish.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you one, if you see a fish rise, will you cover it or will you wait and watch and wait on a fish?
Um,
How do you go about that?
it depends. So if I kind of see, if I'm fishing like, because I don't tend to take 2 rods with me, I'll just tend to stick with one. Um, Purely because it's not the nicest area, and I don't want to be leaving rods on the side of the river, just because you don't know who's coming up behind you sometimes on the calder. Um, so yeah, I'll just tend to take the one rod, and then if I see, if I'm seeing more and more fish rise, then I'll swap to a dry fly setup if I'm using a nymph. If nothing's happening, I'll use the nymphs. But if I see a fish rising, and I've obviously got the dry fly on, but it's still, upstream a little bit. I'll just maybe watch for a little bit and work my way up to it, see how frequently it's rising, make sure I've got the right fly on, and go from there.
Yeah, cool. That made me laugh. You said about leaving your rods around. It reminded me of a place I fished down in Devon, and I'd fished as a guest of a friend of mine, and we got talking, and somehow I managed to leave my rod and line reel on a wall, and went home, and it was only the next morning I'm thinking,
did I take 2 rods?
and I drove. I only had one rod with me.
Yeah.
This is a number of years ago now, and I drove back, and it was still there.
Right, it wouldn't still be if you'd have done that in Yorkshire, it wouldn't still been there.
It show you how old it was. It was a Sage SLT as well,
God.
so it wasn't a cheap
No.
rod, and it was still there in the morning. A friend of mine, actually, Ray, said he did that in Ireland.
Yeah.
He was fishing in Ireland, left a rod on a bridge, and it was still there in the morning.
God, that's terrible.
Yeah, I don't know if it still happened now, but that just reminded me of that. But so, are you loving fishing as much as you've always loved it?
Yeah, even more so now. Obviously, I think with the lockdown and stuff, you take things for granted. Being able to just get in your car and go fishing, and obviously that got taken away from everyone. No one could go out and just go fishing. So obviously, when we was allowed, I said to my partner, who actually I got her a fishing license and a yearbook for the local club. Said, if I'm going fishing, you're off work, I'm going to be going fishing every day. So I said, it's either you're going to have to come with me or you're not going to see me. So yeah, she came with me. And I said to her, I'll never ever take for granted going fishing ever again. If anyone presents me with the opportunity to go fishing somewhere I've never been before, I'm going to bite their hand off. Because you literally don't know what's around the corner these days. So yeah, got to take them opportunities when they come.
Yeah, we kicked off the post-lockdown fly culture with, I think I wrote, it's only when something is taken away from you that you realise how much it means to you.
Yeah.
And it's the same. But does she still fish? Does she have the passion that you have?
No. Not since returning back to work, no. I mean, she'll come with me sometimes, but I'm guessing that now the weather's getting a bit iffy. I think I'll be fishing on my own.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because you want them to love it like you do.
Yeah.
They want to show an interest because it's your passion.
Yeah.
But when it doesn't ignite in the same way, it's really difficult to get them to see how you see it, and you desperately want them to see that as well, don't you?
Yeah. For instance, like we went down to the river, and we was fishing the Euro nymph, and I'd been fishing dry flies for weeks, and because obviously Euro nymph, it does produce more fish, and I showed her this method, and she was like, "Why haven't we done this before? We're catching loads more fish. Why have we not done this before?" And I says, because there was dry flies hatching. You can't fish a nymph when the fish aren't feeding on them. She's like, "But we're catching more fish," and it just wasn't registering. But
No.
it'll
be one of those things, I guess, she'll do occasionally with you. And I know when Emma first thought about it, she said, I can't match your passion for trout and grayling fishing. And that's where the salmon came. And she just loved. And I meant to ask you about this, actually, with, where football was a big part of that. Do you think fishing, the casting aspect in that part of it, appeals from a sports person's point of view as well?
I'm not too sure. I mean, I think, with like fishermen, it's fisherwomen and fishermen. It's always either, they'll leave to go play golf or something, or but the transition from football to fishing, I don't know what happened to football. I just fell out of love with it. I don't think I'll ever fall out of love with fishing, touch wood. But yeah, I'm not too sure. I think maybe if you've got the bug for it, then yeah. But I think maybe if you've not done it before, and maybe not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I was just coming from. I played a lot of football,
yeah,
but cricket as well, and the casting aspect of it, and learning to cast. I don't know. It's not. I don't say it's like batting, but making a good
yeah,
shot or making a
making a
good
good
cast.
cast. Yeah,
That was really
yeah,
appealing to me, and that's I think one of the reasons I liked it so much as well. But how does fishing? You're such a lovely positive advert for fishing. How does fishing feel to you right now?
How does it feel to me? I don't think it's something that I could ever not do. I might maybe take a break or whatever, or not being able to get out for however many weeks because it's been raining, or just life's got in the way. But I don't think I could ever not do it. I think now, I think about fishing every day. I wake up and my vice is set up on my desk in the bedroom. So obviously I wake up and it's one of the first things I see is my fly tying vice and all my fly tying stuff. So I think it'll always be a massive part of me. And I'll always, it'll always be a massive deal in my life. And I think that's just how it's going to be. I don't think I
Mm,
could ever imagine not doing it anymore, not doing fishing or fly tying.
yeah, cool. And on a wider basis, the state of fishing, does that feel in a good place to you right now?
I think there's always going to be a decline in people, especially the youngsters. It's always going to be difficult to get the youngsters involved. Um, but then when you do find, when you do see the talent coming through, then there needs to be opportunities given to them so that they can carry on. Like I always look back and think, what if I'd not have met Gary on the river that one day? So I think if I mentioned the young chap up in Scotland, Gordo. He obviously is just starting out in his fishing journey, and I think if he gets given the opportunities, he's obviously going to take them. Whereas if he doesn't, then he's probably not going to pursue a life
Mm,
with fishing in it.
yeah,
Um, and it's like the same with like getting women involved. Um, I think the one that Yeva did, it's like she was saying about all the hashtags and stuff. It's not really going to make a difference is a hashtag what you put on thing. It's about the opportunities that get given and how then people react to the opportunities that they're being given.
that's really, really good answer. Really, really good answer. And it's kind of interesting you say the hashtag, and as Yova said as well, that, and with the best will in the world, a lot of that is for, I'm not looking at social media a great deal
Yeah,
at the moment, but I always try and when I go on like a few because if people have made the effort,
yeah,
but you've kind of forgotten about it when you're on the next one.
yeah,
It's not whereas like you say, the opportunities and the one Daryl gave you,
yeah,
they're golden, aren't they?
yeah.
And what they've done not only for you but for fishing as a
Hmm.
whole is really, really important. I know there are schemes out there as well, and I
Yeah,
think you're dead right. That's how you engage people,
yeah.
be it grabbing them at a show and saying, "Look, do you want to have a go at this?"
Hmm.
or doing whatever. That's the way to do it, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think.
I mean, a lot of it obviously these days is, social media based. I mean, if you look through my social media, it is all of it is pretty much fishing. Like you won't see much of my private life on there. Um, it's either a trout, a grayling, a fly, or my dog. That's pretty much all my social media is about. And I think once you start, if you are serious about, making it, and well, is I don't know if making it's the right word, but like pursuing like an actual career in it, then I think you need to be continually posting, good content, um, and just keeping it all, not massively. It's all about the wording as well. I think Gareth touched on it in the last podcast he did with you about being, a little bit more creative about what you put on, and and thinking about how you're wording stuff and how it's, you know, getting the attention of the people that are going to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a very valid point, and it is. If it's any consolation, my social media is exactly the same. Fish, not so much flies because I'm not tying so many, but my dog as
Yeah,
well. He's in love
yeah,
with them. He comes with me all the time, and he'll miss now. I can take him trouting. I think I've joined somewhere with grayling that I can
yeah,
take him. Don't know how the logistics, and I'm really worried about him wading around in freezing cold water. So I don't know how that's going to work out. And then I always worry, and on my Facebook, I put some pictures. We saw our daughter in Bristol and we had lunch with her and we wandered
yeah,
around because I was thinking people must think I'm so one
yeah,
dimensional. And it does. It's like you say though, it means so much to you,
yeah,
doesn't it? That it
yeah,
is. And you want people to see that you're, Paul said, he likes doing it, Paul Proctor, because he's out
yeah,
fishing and he can, in effect, walk the walk, I
yeah,
guess. And
mhm,
we all know what a phenomenal
yeah,
angler he is. But it's a really interesting and useful tool for that. But yeah, I worry sometimes I'm a bit too one dimensional. And I usually, instead of shopping, I say fishing by mistake.
yeah,
And so I'm like you and many of the people listening that your life revolves so deeply around
yeah,
it and you're thinking about it the
mhm,
whole time. And, rain wakes me up and I'm thinking, right, what do I do? And that's from my
yeah,
guiding days, I guess, that I'm thinking, right, what do we do if it's really
yeah,
raining? But now it's, are we going to chase salmon or are we going to do
mhm.
so those things? But tell me something then. You said if somebody asks you fishing, you always want to go. Is there a dream place that you would love
I
to
knew,
go visit
I
fish
knew
or
this
place?
was
I'll
gonna
give you
come
three if you want them.
up.
Here's three.
Yeah, oh, the bucket list is massive. It grows every time I see somewhere someone's fishing in a place that's not on the list. That place gets added to the list. I mean, I'd love, to travel around Europe and fish, in Czech Republic and hopefully go back to Poland one day, Bosnia, and obviously maybe many years down the line make the trip over to New Zealand. But that is a dream. That New Zealand is a dream. Um, so I think realistically, I'd like to get over to Europe a little bit more and you know do them adventures. But yeah,
Sounds good to me.
yeah,
Sounds good to me. Tell me, you tie commercially.
yeah.
People are going to be listening to this. If they want some of your fantastic flies, how do they get hold of you?
I think. So either Facebook, Twitter. I do have like a blog, but it's just more. I don't really. I should really do more with my blog. Write a bit more on it, um, or just email me, which is on my blog as well, which I think is Phillippa Hake Fly Fishing at WordPress.com. I think at WordPress.com, one of them.
Perfect. And on
But yeah,
Instagram, what are you on Instagram as?
Instagram, I think it is Phillippa Hake _flyfish. I think, yeah, it's one of them.
Lovely.
But yeah,
Lovely. So people can order some flies for you. I know you put some pictures up, don't you, of beautifully packaged flies as well,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. I think it's important to make things look nice. Um, rather than just being put in a bag and put in an envelope. I spend a little bit more time putting them in little matchboxes, in the foam, nice and neat. And
Nice.
obviously it protects them a little bit more. They're not going to get squashed or anything that way.
Nice.
But yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we've chatted and covered so much stuff and as always gone off topic all over the place. So thank you, Philippa, so much for
Oh, my
I
pleasure.
love your positivity about fishing and what it means to you. And it's been great listening to you chat about your very clear passion for our pastime. So you're a great advert for fly fishing. So
Thank
thank
you.
you from me and for many others of being part of that. And thanks so much for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast
No,
as well.
thanks for having me, Pete. Thank you. It's been a
You're
blast.
more, you're more than welcome. Everyone, this has been the Fly Culture podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this one. We've got many more down the line for you. So tune in very, very soon.